Hello, it's Diane Sare, LaRouche independent candidate for U.S. Senate, running against Chuck Schumer from New York, and I have a VE Day message to everyone. I would like to congratulate all veterans of World War II who fought Nazism in Europe. Today is the 77th anniversary of the victory in Europe, which we achieved with an enormous assist and sacrifice from the then Soviet Union, which lost 26 million lives and whose Russian people are today again embattled against a Nazi takeover of factions of the military and government in the nation of Ukraine. I would like to share the message from Russian President Vladimir Putin to congratulating the people of the Donetsk and Lugansk, the new People's Republics as recognized by Russia. He said, "Today our common duty is to prevent the revival of Nazism, which brought so much suffering to the people of different countries. It is necessary to preserve and pass on to posterity the truth about the events of the war years and the common spiritual values and traditions of fraternal friendship." Now, as those of you who watch my Facebook channel may have seen yesterday, I spoke at a rally at Union Square. It was actually, on the question of the food crisis, and that emergency action has to be taken to prevent starvation as a result of the, not really a result of the military action, but the sanctions going along with it and the mass brainwashing of the people of the United States and Western Europe to actually support Nazism. I ran into this in bold relief, coming ironically from a German fellow who was screaming at us about Putin, the great mass murderer. And I said, "What about the Nazis in Ukraine?" He said, "What is a Nazi?" And I said, "Well, I find it odd that a German doesn't know what a Nazi is." But he was adamant that there was no Nazi problem in Ukraine, that Russia was the aggressor. I made the point that it's very ironic that you have a situation today where Germany is supplying heavy weapons to Nazis. I had hoped that that would have ended at the end of World War II. Unfortunately, we also discovered that many people in Manhattan are totally brainwashed. Apparently, they believe everything on CNN and the New York Times, which is hard to imagine because the truth has come out about the U.S. atrocities that were committed in Syria, in Libya, where Hillary Clinton cackled over the brutal death of Gaddafi in Libya, over the fact that the United States was supplying weapons to ISIS and Al-Qaeda, that Barack Obama had regular meetings on Tuesday nights where he would plan whom he would assassinate with drone attacks with no pretense of due process or any interest in getting to the truth of who is behind international terrorism. And I have my suspicions about that. So somehow, even though people admit that the United States has committed atrocities, that Julian Assange should not be in prison for exposing the truth, that he has committed no crime, nonetheless, they would like to believe that everything they're hearing now is true and that there's no hope except somehow Putin must be brought down, Russia has to be taken out, even though it's a nuclear superpower. And the truth of the matter means nothing to them. And the fact that they are paying for it. Look at the price of gasoline right now in the United States, the price of food. I was blown away. You know, I've been petitioning. People coming out of the grocery stores are in shock about what they are spending on food. This is a result of our policies, not a result of Putin's policies. That's why my campaign for U.S. Senate is so urgent, and why it's so urgent that I get on the ballot, and why the state of New York has gone to such lengths to make the electoral situation completely insane, where viewers may not be aware that we do not even currently have defined congressional districts here, 2 years after the 2020 census. Now, let me also share with you what some of our deranged senior members of the House and Senate have had to say. And I actually think we should set up a nursing home. You know, when I was an exchange student in Sweden, they had a lovely senior home for artists and actors and musicians outside of Stockholm. But maybe we should have some kind of beautiful place far away, perhaps on an island with no cell phone access or internet access, for politicians who have lost their minds, and they can retire quietly without ability to influence policy or brainwash their followers. So Senator Lindsey Graham was on Fox News saying that Putin has to be overthrown, that he's a war criminal. Our genius CIA director, William Burns, said, quote, Russia would double and Burns said Russia would double down in Ukraine because it can't afford to lose. I want to triple down on our effort to arm Ukraine. That's what Lindsey Graham said on Fox. He was reporting on what Burns was saying. He said Putin must go. Let's take out Putin by aiding Ukraine. There is no off-ramp for him in this war. He's earned the designation of a state sponsor of terrorism. Give me a break. The United States, by stealing the money of the people of Afghanistan, is going to cause as many as 20 million people there to starve to death. Already, 14,000 newborn babies died of starvation earlier this year in that country. Is that not a kind of terrorism? That's far more civilians than Russia has killed in Ukraine. The city of Kyiv still has electricity and running water. Otherwise, I'm sure Nancy Pelosi would not have bothered to hop on her broomstick and fly over there. So this is just outrageous war propaganda. It is exceedingly dangerous. And Lindsey Graham went on to make it clear that if we don't defeat Putin, then the next thing you know, China will invade Taiwan. So he's preparing us for the next war, as if we would survive a nuclear confrontation with Russia. And of course, he was joined in his insanity by Liz Cheney and Jake Auchincloss from Massachusetts. Liz Cheney being a Republican, as people know, Jake Auchincloss being a Democrat, who had an op-ed in the Washington Post saying, quote, it must be the policy of the United States that the strategic objective in Ukraine is for a free and democratic Ukraine. I guess just like the United States, where the Biden administration has in fact created a disinformation governance board to make sure that nobody says or thinks anything that does not cohere with the narrative that is being imposed on us. Well, again, I would like to say that this St. George's ribbon is a reminder that fascism was defeated in 1945, and fascism will be defeated again by men and women of goodwill from around the planet. I would again like to urge that Americans call your congressmen and senators, tell them that you do not support a nuclear war with Russia over Ukraine. We have no strategic interest in defending Ukraine against Russia's actions, and you can go on about the provocations of the NATO expansion, the bioweapons laboratories, the Nazis, whatever you want to say, but tell them you emphatically oppose sending billions and billions of dollars into Ukraine to prolong a war which should have been ended several weeks ago with a negotiation that Ukraine would be neutral, that Crimea would be recognized as part of the Russian Federation. And now, because they refuse to abide by the Minsk Accords, Lugansk and Donetsk also must be recognized as independent republics. That is the solution. But don't allow the media to stampede us into a situation from which there is no return. So again, celebrate the day. Congratulate any World War II veterans that you know who are still living. They did a great service for mankind. And even though the United States and Ukraine don't wish to end the glorification of Nazism, most of the rest of us does, and we appreciate their sacrifice and victory.